Continuing with Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2. Today it's text number 49. So that's Bhagavad Gita 2:49. Then today we're going to hear about the idea of misers or kripana, the kripana or the miserly person, Krishna. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So Bhagavad Gita 2:49. Durena yavaram karma buddhi yoga dhananjaya buddho saranam anvicha kripana phalahetabaha. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation, O Dhananjaya, rid yourself of all fruit of activities by devotional service and surrender fully to that consciousness. Those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers. Srila Prabhupada's purport. One who has actually come to understand one's constitutional position as the eternal servitor of the Lord gives up all engagements save working in Krishna consciousness. As already explained, Bhakti Yoga means transcendental loving service to the Lord. Such devotional service is the right course of action for the living entity. Only misers desire to enjoy the fruit of their own work just to be further entangled in material bondage. Except for work in Krishna consciousness, all activities are abominable because they continually bind the worker to the cycle of birth and death. One should therefore never desire to be the cause of work. Everything should be done in Krishna consciousness for the satisfaction of Krishna. Misers do not know how to utilize the assets of riches which they acquire by good fortune or by hard labor. One should spend all energies working in Krishna consciousness, and that will make one's life successful. Like the misers, unfortunate persons do not employ their human energy in the service of the Lord. Just say that again, last part. One should spend all energies working in Krishna consciousness, and that will make one's life successful. Like the misers, unfortunate persons do not employ their human energy in the service of the Lord. Om Aganaatimirandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, and my spiritual masters forcing me to open my eyes with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto His lotus feet. Like the misers, unfortunate persons do not employ their human energy in the service of the Lord. So we're all interested in fortune. We're all looking for a fortune, something very fortunate, something valuable. And unfortunately, we find ourselves captivated by the very small things that are available in conditioned existence. And we become like misers, this verse is saying. Those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers. So the miser is very depicted as being very focused and self-indulgent. very self-indulgent. Not knowing that he's trapped by that small fortune, or whatever fortune, be it small or large in the material world, into a very miserly way of life, a miserly way of existence, where one is captivated by whatever he has, but he doesn't see all around him what is actually the position, that he's cut himself off from his real existence and is so bewildered by the apparent value that he has. So this is a miser. And Krishna is advising Arjuna to rid himself of all fruitive activities by devotional service and develop this consciousness. Surrender fully to that consciousness. What is the consciousness? Devotional service. So more or less, we're being invited to reconnect, to Krishna. We have disconnected, pulled the plug out, so to speak, from Krishna. We have separated ourselves from Krishna, and we are busy pursuing the fruits of our actions in the material existence. And it's being pointed out that they're very miserly, they're very meager. It's a very small vision that we take when we become absorbed in the bodily concept of life and the different things that we surround ourselves by. Yashatma buddhi kuna pe tridatuke svadi kala tradishu bhuma ijati yatirtha buddhi salilena karachit janeshu abhijneshu sa eva gokara. The animals are very limited in their ability to understand much more than the eating, sleeping, mating, and defending according to their specific body. But the human being is not meant to be like that. The human being is supposed to become very broad in their contemplation of what is valuable in life, and not simply absorbed in the basic activities of the animals. So we have to very much see this, that the human form of life in the Bhagavatam has said that it's not simply meant for this sense gratification. Kamashana indriya priti labo ya jivasya tattva jignasha nartu yaschiha karma bi. Human life is not simply meant for sense gratification, but it is meant for inquiring. Tato Brahma Jignasa, it is meant to inquire into the absolute. Srila Prabhupada in Bhagavatam says that the human being will ponder these things, will think, who am I? Why am I forced to get old? Why am I forced to endure the difficulties of the material existence? Things don't seem to be quite right here in this world. But the animal doesn't have that propensity or the ability to ponder. And they busy themselves in eating. And you see the animals in the fields, the cows and the horses and the goats and the sheep, and their head is down onto the ground. They're forced by material nature, and the desire for eating is there, and the food is there, and they busy themselves in that activity day after day. And they don't see that by the rising and setting of the sun, another day has passed and is lost, but they're engaged in that activity, and they do not see their inevitable destruction. Bhagavatam says, we don't see that. The human being is kamashana indriya priti, not meant simply for sense gratification. Kamashana indriya priti labo jiveta yavata jivasya tattva jignasha na arto yaschiha karma bi. Human being is meant for a higher purpose. He's meant to utilize the human form of life to reconnect to his higher self. This fruit of activity, as being described by Lord Krishna, the fruit of activities should be given up. Rid yourself of all fruit of activities. And how is that done? By devotional service. There's different ways. The Bhagavad Gita describes all the different paths to come to the transcendental platform. In the 6th chapter Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes all these different processes that we can be engaged in karma yogi, or we can just be a karmi, let's say. One may be a karmi, one may be a jnani, and one may be a yogi. But in Chaitanya Charitamrita it says that they're not satisfied. Bhukti mukti siddhi kami sakali ashanta. The bhukti, the karmi, bhukti mukti, one person's desiring liberation, bhukti mukti siddhi, somebody else is desiring the mystic perfections of yoga, but they're not able to be fully satisfied. Bhukti mukti siddhi kami sakali ashanta. Krishna Bhakti Naishkama Ata Eva Shanta. The devotee of the Lord is actually able to come to this platform of full satisfaction. Why is that? Because he's situated again in his constitutional position. This is very important. We don't belong in the material world pursuing sense gratification or pursuing yoga through the bodily gymnastics. We're not supposed to be embodied souls, twisting the body in different yogic postures. Yeah, it's a process, but that's not the ultimate position. So gradually, if one is able to come out of the material concept of life through the processes of yoga, he will ultimately come to the bhakti yoga process. Bahunam jamanam te gyanavam mam prapajate vasudeva sarvamati samahatma sadulabha. After many births and deaths in the material world, one who is actually in knowledge, so higher than the sense gratifier, is the person searching for knowledge. And after many births of cultivating knowledge, one can come to the platform of understanding Vasudev, the personality of Godhead. So in that 6th chapter where Krishna is explaining all these processes to come out of this entanglement, he says that of all yogis, that yogi who always abides in me is most intimately connected with me in yoga and is the highest of all yogis. So this become a yogi, Krishna says. We have to take up some kind of yoga process to connect. So that's the whole idea. We are disconnected and we have to reconnect. So yoga means to connect, to link. That English word yoke, the bullocks are connected by the yoke. So that is a derivative of the word yoga. So we want to reconnect now to our higher self and give up the lower self. But this connection means that we become very self-indulgent, we become miserly, we don't become broad-minded, but we become narrow-minded. And that is being described in this verse, as we become very self-indulgent and miserly. It's also called the kripana, miserly person. So no one really appreciates a miser, and the miser doesn't actually appreciate themselves either, really. It's a very not a very good picture. We do remember seeing films in this in our childhood. I think it was, Tom Sawyer was the famous one. I think it was, and then other people. Anyway, we've all seen the depiction of such miserly persons. So this is not a very great position to be in. So rather than that, it's already explained. Prabhupada says one should give up all engagements And then he qualifies that by saying, save working in Krishna consciousness. We cannot become inactive. We are not dull matter. We are active by constitution. The living being is desirous. That's the symptom of the living. It's the living symptom to have desires. You can't act. You can't be alive unless you have desires. First comes the thinking, then the feeling, then the willing. So the actions will come after the contemplation, and that is there. So we cannot give up all engagements. We can't become desireless or inactive. But so instead of being engaged in miserly activities, which link us, and the purport Srila Prabhupada is explaining, that link us to this cycle of birth and death. They continually bind the worker to the cycle of birth and death. So this is a big subject matter. It will be more explained as we go through Bhagavad Gita. But we don't see that all these varieties of activities in the material world are linking us to this cycle of birth and death, either in a very wealthy situation, a very beautiful situation. We may get all the different benefits, or benefits of the material world, good birth, wealth, beauty, and so on. Or we may have none of those things and maybe pushed down into lower species of life, but the whole thing is this cycle of birth and death. One Prabhupada says, should therefore never desire to be the cause of work, because everything, all the work that we do complicates more and more into the reactions of karma. And one is forced to again take birth and death, up and down, short duration of life, long duration of life, different species of life. And that is described also in the modes of material nature. Karanam guna sangashat sadasat yon janmashu. The living entity is wandering in the material nature, and due to his attachment to that material nature, he meets with good and evil in various species of life, due to that three modes of material nature. So this machine of the material energy is going on, and the bewildered spirit soul is thinking himself I'm doing well, and then he does very bad, and then he's doing well, up and down, up and down. So we are encouraged to reconnect to Krishna consciousness, to do everything for the satisfaction of Krishna. We've tried to satisfy what we thought was ourselves through the senses of the body and the mind, through the false ego. We identify in this way. So everything has to be dismantled, and all the way back from the gross material body through the subtle material mind and intellect, and even the false ego has to be dismantled. In the 18th chapter, text 58, Krishna says, if you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. So again, this is an amazing points are made just in one statement of the Lord. If you become conscious of me, Krishna says, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. So this is the way we come out of material existence. And I was listening to a nice lecture by Bhaktivedanta Maharaj, who was explaining very nicely that the other processes of yoga are all very self-indulgent, actually. And they more or less depend on my cultivation of knowledge as a jnani, my performance of yoga practices as a yogi, my fruit of activities as a karmi. So it's all about our own ability. But the process of devotional service here, Krishna is explaining in this verse, you will be able to pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life, just like the other persons trying to overcome these difficulties. But it will be done by my grace. When we surrender to Krishna, Krishna is saying, Savadamam Parityagam Mamikam Saranam Raja. Abandon all types of varieties of religion and surrender unto me. I will deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. Krishna is giving that if we surrender to him. By his grace, Krishna says, if you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. If, however, you do not work in such consciousness but act through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. So it's a little fearful. It's good to be a little fearful. If, however, you do not work in this consciousness but act through false ego, meaning false identification with the body and all that goes with the body, not hearing me, you will be lost. So Krishna wants us to hear him. In the beginning of the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, now hear from me how by practicing yoga and full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. Tat Shrino, Krishna says, hear from me. Maya Shakta Manapartha Yogam Yunjan Madashraya Asamsayam Samagramam Yatagyasyasi Tat Shrino. Just hear by the practice of yoga and full consciousness of me with mind attached. You can know me in full, free from doubt. And why does Krishna want that? Krishna wants that for the benefit of the living being, to be again situated in his constitutional position. Srila Prabhupada used the example of the hand. The hand's constitutional position is to take the sweetmeat and place it in the mouth to feed the stomach, because the stomach will then reciprocate and nourish the whole body. So in a similar way, the living entity is meant for service to the Supreme Being, who is the source of nourishment for all other living beings. Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam. Krishna is that one Supreme who is providing everything for the other eternals, other living beings. So it's actually very simple, but the application, we've discussed this many times, is not so simple. We've used the example of Abhimanyu. Abhimanyu in the Mahabharata, he had learned, he was a young warrior, and he had learned the art of entering into a very difficult phalanx or arrangement of the army. So he knew how to penetrate and enter in and create havoc there by breaking the outer section of the military arrangement. So he knew that art, but he was not so expert in coming out. He obviously had some knowledge of how to do that, but he wasn't completely expert. And when he was surrounded by various generals, he was unable to come out. So the living entity is a bit like that. We enter. It's actually described in Srimad Bhagavatam that the living entity wanders into and is attracted by the forest of material enjoyment. And he enters there thinking, yes, I can go there, I can go there. And then he becomes trapped. He gets lost in the forest of material enjoyment, pursuing the mirage. All these different analogies or examples come up. Like a mirage. So you go in to the desert and we think that there's water and we go after the water, and then we go further in and we find that the water is still the same distance away, and we go further and further until we're lost and we're exhausted. So the living entity is like that. We have entered into this forest of material enjoyment. It appeared that there was something of great value there. I will be able to act independently I will be able to fulfill all my desires. I'll be able to imitate my father. Natural for a child, natural for a small person with limited capacity to think oneself able to do that. And so we wander off there and we engage in fruitive activities and we become very self-centered. We become very miserly and we associate with all these other miserly people, all of the 8 billion human beings here as human beings on the earthly planet. And they are just a few compared to all the living beings all over the universe. It is inconceivable just how many they are. But the amazing potency of the Lord is that he's able to make an arrangement where zillions of living entities are able to think and consider themselves to be the supreme enjoyer. And if I'm not quite the supreme enjoyer, I can get there by my fruit of desires and activities to arrange things just suitable for me. And then I will be able to be fully satisfied. So that's the power of Maya. The power of Maya is so strong that we don't want to listen to Krishna. Krishna is saying, if you act through false ego, not listening or hearing me, you will be lost. And Krishna doesn't want that. He doesn't want us to be lost. But what can he do? He's very benevolent. So he keeps trying again and again. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the most magnificent of all incarnations. Namo Namaha Varanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namani Gaura Tuisha. Krishna is appearing as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he's bestowing what has not been bestowed by any other incarnation of the Lord. That is, he's given freely the pure love of Godhead without any conditions, and that is the greatest benediction. We cannot, very hard to appreciate, to realize fully. We tend to not fully understand what's available. But the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has broken open the treasure house of love of God and is distributing it freely with his associates Nityananda Prabhu, Advaita Acharya, Radha, Srivas, and all the Vaishnavas are distributing this pure love of Godhead, and it's available. As we said earlier, it's actually a very simple process. We simply have to reconnect. Just like when a plug is fallen out of a socket or has been pulled out or whatever way it got out, and you place the plug back in, you become reconnected. And when you get reconnected, you reconnect to the energy that is available there. So when we reconnect to Krishna, that is the important thing. And the Vaishnavas are encouraging people, just reconnect in some small way. Take this prasadam. That was Srila Prabhupada. Hare Nama, Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nastyeva Gatiranyata. In the age of Kali, there's no other way than the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So Prabhupada went to Tompkins Square and he sat down. He played on his kartals to give the holy name. The power of the holy name is so powerful. Nam Chintamani Krishna's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purna Shuddha Nitya Mukta Binatva Namanamino. It is just like Krishna himself, and it is the bestower of all spiritual benedictions. So the holy name is distributed by the great Vaishnavas, and they are also distributing the Krishna Prasadam. So Srila Prabhupada, even in the very difficult situation he was in, would take one apple and cut the apple into a few pieces and give everyone some little something, not so much to fill their bellies, but to give the connection to Krishna through the holy name and through Krishna's prasadam. And Srila Prabhupada had the faith that faith. Now, faith is described in many places, and we get our tendency is to think faith means blind faith. People say, "Oh, that's only faith. You've got faith in your mantras and your tantras, and you've got faith like that." So they're thinking it is blind faith, but faith, real faith, is not blind. We place our faith logically, and the faith gradually becomes pratyaksha. That's described in the 9th chapter Bhagavad Gita. Rajvijya Rajaguyam Pavitram Idam Uttamam Pratyakshava Gamam Dharmyam Sushukam Kartamavyayam. The faith is there. So it may be very fragile in the beginning, just a little. And Srila Prabhupada said, yes, people had a little faith. He thought, oh, let us go along and see what this old fellow, Srila Prabhupada speaking like that, see what this old man has to say. Very little faith, but just let's see. We'll go along. And the little bit of faith. But that faith, if cultivated properly through the process of devotional service, it becomes firm faith. This is called nishta, where the faith matures into realization. And Krishna engenders that faith in so many verses of the Bhagavad Gita. He explains to help us have a little faith and just hear from me. And he explains, Dehinosmin yata dehe komanam yovanam jara. The embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age. Just see and hear from me, and I'll explain it to you. Krishna says, you've gone from childhood to youth, but you're the same person, but your body has changed. So you will go from youth to middle age. Your body will change, but you will be the same person. And you will go from middle age to old age. You will actually end up with an old body. But you'll be the same person who'll remember being a child, who'll remember your activities there. You'll remember all the stages of your life, and you'll be the same person. And your body has totally changed. So Krishna says, just try to understand that you will gain another body at the demise of this body. At your death, you will take another body. And he says the self-realized soul is not bewildered by this change of death. So as we hear with faith and we nurture that faith, nourish the faith, and we nurture it with hearing, we hear the Hare Krishna mantra to purify the heart. We nurture it by taking Krishna's prasadam. We nurture it by hearing from the Shastras and hearing from the bona fide devotees of the Lord. Then that becomes matured more and more until, as Krishna says in that 9th chapter, verse 2, that pratyakshavam dharmyam, and then sushukam kartamavyayam. This knowledge is the king of education. It's the most secret of all secrets because it gives direct perception of the self by realization. So we become realized. This is self-realization. The faith matures into firm faith, and shushukam kartamavya. This is joyfully performed. Why is it joyful? Because it gives us this connection to Krishna, the realization, the experience that I'm not the body, that I have nothing to do with this. This is called the Brahma Bhuta platform. Srila Prabhupada spoke in Vrindavan, 1971 or two. Yeah. And he says that everyone is struggling to gain something which he doesn't possess. And he's lamenting for something that he has lost. Sounds like a miser, doesn't it? Miserly person, struggling for something that we don't possess and lamenting for something that we've lost. But when Srila Prabhupada continues and he says, when he himself, but when he himself realizes that there is nothing to gain and there's nothing to lose, that actually I have nothing to do with this material world. That is called Brahma Bhuta. That is Brahman realization. So we can see that we have nothing to do with this. There's nothing to be gained and nothing to be lost, because we gain it for some time and it's taken, it's gone. In a few short years, it will go. So we come into the world with nothing, we leave with nothing. Pashyati na pashyati. We see it. We see the futility of pursuit of material gain and lamentation of what we lose in this world. It's there all the time. And again, we've mentioned there's bumper stickers all over the place, isn't it? Bumper stickers. Life's a bitch, then you die. This was one bumper sticker. People know that it is a cruel world and filled with, like Krishna says, it's filled with various miseries that it's temporary. Mama pecha purna jama dukalayama shashvatam napnuvanti mahatmana shamsitim paramam gata. So this futile attempt has to be given up, and it's very, very simple. But as we've said, the application is a little tricky. How to see it, to assimilate the truths and piece them together and build a very strong faith and realization of the position that we are in this world, and then to reconnect more and more to this process of Krishna consciousness that Srila Prabhupada is saying is the panacea for all the difficulties. Only misers desire to enjoy the fruit of their own work, just to be further entangled in material bondage. Except for work in Krishna consciousness, all activities are abominable because they continually bind the worker to the cycle of birth and death. One should therefore never desire to be the cause of work. Why? Because it will return you to this cycle. You'll be stuck. Everything should be done in Krishna consciousness for the satisfaction of Krishna. Now, is Krishna a miser? Is Krishna just all about Krishna? Is it all for him and nothing for the little poor jivas that have to serve him? No, there's nothing miserly about Krishna. Krishna is unlimitedly everything. He's unlimitedly beautiful. He's unlimitedly kind. He's unlimitedly beautiful. Everything. And everything he does is wonderful. It's perfect and complete. Ishopanishad says it's perfect and complete. So his arrangement is completely perfect for the little complete wholes to be fully satisfied in their complete relationship with the complete whole. And so they will experience great pleasure, the pleasure, the nectar for which they have always been anxious and striving for, but that has eluded them birth after birth after birth. Prabhupada, at the end of his purport for this verse of Bhagavad Gita, 249, he says, misers do not know how to utilize the assets of riches which they acquire by good fortune or by hard labor. What one should do is spend all energies working in Krishna consciousness. And Krishna says that throughout the Gita. Yat karoshi yad yajnasi yaj jahoshi dadasi yat tapashyasi kunti yat tat karushva madarpan. All that you do, all that you eat, all that you offer, all that you give away, all austerities that you perform should be done as an offering to me. Always think of me, become my devotee, bow down and worship me. Don't worship somebody else. Why? Because he's self-centered? No, because he knows that will not bring you the satisfaction. He only wants to give you the satisfaction that you're looking for. So that will come through absorbing your mind in me. One should spend all energies working in Krishna consciousness, and that will make one's life successful. So we see how convinced Srila Prabhupada was, how much faith he had in every action. He was fully convinced. We were reading Srimad Bhagavatam yesterday, where Srila Prabhupada quoted the various acharyas and great personalities in this line, second canto Srimad Bhagavatam. He's quoting Prahlad Maharaj, that I no longer have time for. Prahlad Maharaj, Madhavendra Puri, Rupa Goswami, Lord Chaitanya. In one purport, he was quoting all those personalities, saying that I now have come to this platform of Krishna consciousness, so any other engagements, be they very pious engagements, whatever engagements, I have no time anymore. I can't worship forefathers. Please forgive me. I'm not interested in the different demigod worship, although we understand that they're bestowing things on behalf of the Lord. But I'm taking this direct process of full absorption in Krishna, and I may be called a madman. I may be called this and that, blasphemed by the followers of Vedic ritualistic performances, etc. But I don't care. I simply surrender. So this was Srila Prabhupada's mood. He was 150% convinced that by accepting the direction of the Supreme Lord through the bona fide spiritual masters, he says, Srila Prabhupada, and the Vedic scriptures say this throughout, that there is only one Guru. One Guru, that Guru is Krishna. Krishna is the Supreme Guru, and everyone else is his servant. And if we serve Krishna properly, then that is actually Guru. And that's the way the whole system goes on. So Srila Prabhupada said that like that. He was fully convinced. And he would ask us, are you convinced? And often, oh, yeah, I think so. Sort of, a little bit. So we have to keep on becoming convinced daily so that we can answer when Srila Prabhupada asks us, are you convinced? So that we can say, yes, Srila Prabhupada, I'm convinced. And then Srila Prabhupada may point out, well, why are you doing this? And why are you not doing that? Why? So how convinced are you? So yes, we should hear from Krishna, touch Srinu, hear from Krishna, hear from his bona fide representatives, hear from the Shastras, and become convinced that only by the process of devotional service can we know Krishna. Bhaktyamama bhajanati yavanyas chasmi tatvata tato tat vishate tadanantaram. Only by devotional service can I be known. Only in this way can we enter into the mysteries of Krishna's understanding and can go back home, back to Godhead. That's what Krishna says. I'm not manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. I'm always covered by my eternal creative potency, yoga mind, so the deluded world does not know me, who am unborn and infallible. So many verses are there where Krishna says, this is the system I have. I reveal myself to my devotees when I'm pleased with them, with their transcendental loving service to me. No other way. There's no other way that I reveal myself. I will always be covered to a certain degree by my yoga maya and will not reveal myself fully through the process of different cultivation of knowledge, fruitive activities, yogic mystic perfections, but I will reveal myself to my devotees when I am pleased with them. And so that is the process for developing to become a Mahatma instead of a Duratma, a cripple-minded person. We have to become broad-minded. And when we're broad-minded, we'll see ourselves as eternal servants of the Lord. We'll see all other living entities as eternal servants of the Lord. And we will see Krishna to our full satisfaction. And that will perfect our life. So I'm going to finish at that point. We invite comments, that when you do see this either live or you may view it a little later on, please, if you have any comments, any realizations or reflections on anything that we've been discussing, please feel free to put them and we will see anything that's there. Otherwise, we'll continue with the next verse that comes up is text 50, Bhagavad Gita, and we'll hear what Srila Prabhupada has to say there. Grantaraja Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Anantakota Vaishnava Brinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari. Krishna.